Hi, my name is Greg Canty, and I'd like to welcome you to the Win Happy podcast. I love chatting to people from all walks of life about their lives and their careers, about the choices they make along the way to pursue their happiness, and what winning actually means to them. I hope you enjoy these conversations as much as I do. Thanks for listening. On today's podcast, I chat with the wonderful author, artist, photographer, nature lover, and sometimes life philosopher, Sue Stolberger. She's had the most fascinating life, with most of it spent living in a tent in the Ruha National Park in the East African wilderness. In part one of this two-part podcast, Sue chats about her early magical, idyllic life in Tanzania, her love of painting, living hand-to-mouth for 4 years in Italy, and then finally returning to Tanzania and purchasing a Jeep with the proceeds of an exhibition of her work. After spending some time exploring and painting in many different locations at weekends, she met and fell in love with sculptor Rob Glenn. After a few twists and turns, a good turn to a stranger in need resulted in a permit to live and work in Ruha National Park, where they were the only people permitted to be there. She remembers a safari visit when she was very young and feeling that her heart was going to burst with happiness. Let's hear the story that brought her there. Sue Stolberger, a huge welcome to the Win Happy podcast.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
It's even nicer for me to be here. Can you describe, because the listeners will be able to hear lots, Can you describe where we are?
We're in Skull, in my parents' beautiful, beautiful home, which is not too far from the sea, and has a beautiful view, and have lots of lovely birds, lots of lovely plants, and it's gorgeous. I love it.
And the weather forecast has cheated us a little bit, because it was supposed to be, it was definitely not supposed to be this nice. And we're fortunate enough to be sitting outside, listening to some of your pals. Yes,
definitely. Yeah, no, it is. It's a little bit not as warm as it has been. It's a bit chillier today, but it's still lovely. There's lots of birdies. Yeah, it's great.
Can you tell me about your little friends?
Yeah, I have got goldfinches. There's about 40 goldfinches, and I have about at least 50 or 60 doves, ringneck doves that come to feed, and then what else? All the chaffinches, loads and loads of sparrows, millions of sparrows. I think this is Sparrow's headquarters, is this house.
HQ.
The HQ, definitely, Sparrow HQ. I think every sparrow in Skull has come to my house, because I think they've all been breeding here, and the birds are all mad for breeding at the moment, which is just amazing. I just love it. There's also little tiny blue tits are also here, and anyway, it's non-stop action, which I love. I really love birds. It's so phenomenal just to have them around. They're wonderful teachers about all sorts of things. I love watching them do their business.
Well, you feed them well.
I do. They're feeding me out of house and home. I pay, they're my biggest expense at the moment, but happily so.
So it's the first item on your shopping list.
Definitely. I just had to go out and get, because we ran out of food. They were short change this morning, so I had to quickly go out before you came to make sure I had enough, so I could give them their proper due amount.
I'm not sure if you've ever come across him, but there's a singer, a very popular singer from Cork called John Spillane, and he's a song about the Doan chorus. And in his song, he literally plays the guitar, I think, imitating all of the different bird songs. And if you've ever seen him in concert, I've no idea how he can rattle through all of those bird names.
Wow.
And he goes through absolutely every one of them. And I think he's got a great way of observing the things around him. He's got another beautiful song called The Cherry Tree. And it's all about that time of the year and welcoming it back again, and the seasons changing and everything. Yeah. So the listeners are probably wondering, who in the name of God is this character, Sue Stolberger? And I suppose how we met was at party of a mutual friend, fantastic Catherine.
Yeah.
We did a New Year's Day walk, and of course we're back in her place for soup and sandwiches. She was saying to me, "You have to get this woman on the podcast. She's amazing." So here we are.
That's so funny.
Yeah, I mean, she was really enthusiastic. Okay, I'll talk to her.
Well, it's very kind of her.
So lovely.
Yeah, yes, it's very kind.
I've been reading the most beautiful book that you gifted to me a month or so ago, called Nature Speaks.
Yeah.
And you're an artist, I would say a writer, a photographer, and I'm also going to squeeze in a philosopher because for me this book was a book about life through nature, and we can get into all of that. But one of the things you speak about in the book was the importance of silence, and it's very strange. I drove to your beautiful house in Skull, and I came from Crookhaven, so give or take it's 20 minutes of a drive. And I decided I wouldn't put the radio on, or I wouldn't phone anyone, and I'd just take the journey in silence so I could just have a good think about our conversation. My God Almighty, I was so fidgety. Sitting in silence in the car and not listening to something and being agitated to something.
Yeah.
And I can tell you honestly, it was not a natural state for me.
Yeah.
Are we all like that?
Yes, it's not it is a natural state, but nowadays people are so conditioned to noise. They cannot cope when there's no noise. That's why it's so important to live in silence, to have silence. Sometimes, a point in the day, you have to do that, because otherwise your brain doesn't get time to rest.
Yeah.
And you actually, who are you? People filling up their brains with stuff. What for? Why not look at one's own brain, see what's going on in there? Because that's really where the business is. It's really where the fun part is. If you can just enjoy it, enjoy yourself, enjoy being you.
Yeah.
And that's what people have lost. They don't know how to enjoy being themselves. And that's what we really need to encourage, particularly children, to start doing. Because until you can be happy with yourself, happy in your own skin, you can't be happy anywhere.
Yeah.
Because it starts with you, has to start with you. And everybody else will be happy too around you, because you'll be different.
And based on my small little experiment of the 20-minute car drive, I can honestly say to you, I couldn't tell you the last time where I've been absolutely still, not around anyone or anything, just contemplating what's around me. It just doesn't happen.
Amazing.
You know?
Yeah. But how did you see? I mean, did you see more, or were you just so worried about your own brain because it wasn't doing anything? It was frantic for noise.
It was, and it took me a good few minutes to start. Okay, you're okay. You don't have to ring someone, and you don't have to press play on the podcast or on the music. I started to hear the noise of the engine a little bit after a while.
Yes.
But I was genuinely, I started reflecting then that this is kind of crazy that you need that distraction all of the time.
Yes.
Yeah, it really is strange.
Well, I'm glad you came to that conclusion.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. It's a good start.
Now you see, you've got a perspective on silence that I certainly don't have, and it was hard earned. Or maybe it wasn't hard earned at all. Maybe,
for me?
Yeah, it was,
no.
It's the most gorgeous gift.
Well, I think for me, because I've lived by myself for a long time, and you definitely have a whole load of gremlins that you have to deal with.
Yeah.
But that happens within time, and you make sure that you deal with them, because otherwise you go crazy. And when you're on your own, in those days where I was living in the middle of nowhere, there was no one to talk to, no one to ring up. There was no Wi-Fi, there was nothing. And so when your brain started going crazy, you had to sort it out, you had to deal with it. And that was how I learned, was that, you learn that you go through the motions, you realize, well, what is it I'm so worried about? And you realize that it's all rubbish, I'm not worried about anything. I'm very happy, there's nothing wrong. And you realize there's nothing to be worried about, there's nothing to be stressing about. But it happens, it's organic, but it happens by itself. because I had no choice. Otherwise, I would go crazy.
And all of this came from your 6-month experience in the East African wilderness. Was it not 6 months?
Six it was years.
It was 34 years.
Yes, it was years.
Yeah.
I've lived since I started living out away from people when I was 25. That was when I stopped living in a house. I was living in a tent. So from when I was 25 until I was 65, I lived in a tent.
Okay, so I need to figure out, and I'm going to do this with the listeners. How in the name of God did this come about? So something I ask all of my guests is, who the hell are you and where did you come from? Just to get a picture of that background. So where did you grow up and what did Mum and Dad do?
Okay, I grew up in Tanzania. I actually was born in Jamaica, and then my dad was a civil engineer, and when I was 4, his job in Jamaica finished, and we went to Ireland. We came to Ireland, and he was looking to start his own business, his own practice as a civil engineer in the west of Ireland, and I remember I was 4, and I remember we were being looked after by a lady, in a hotel for a long time because my mum and dad were about looking for a place. Anyway, at that time, also staying with my granny. At that time, then he got a telegram from the company that he used to work for, saying that the man who's in charge of building the university in Tanzania, the first university ever, has got very sick and can't continue. This is a telegram. Would you like the job? And so my dad absolutely jumped at it, said yes, of course, love it. So literally, he sent us a message, and we were all together then, and so he went off to Tanzania immediately, and we stayed. And then after, I don't know how long it was, then we joined him in Tanzania. It took ages to go by. That you flew in those days, but it's very glamorous in those days when you were flying. You had to get dressed up. And we went via Khartoum, and I think it was Khartoum we went to. And then anyway, we ended up finally in Tanzania, and there was my dad. I was so pleased to see him because it felt ages that he'd been away, and he'd found us a house. I think that's what we were waiting for. And I remember when we got to the house, I was absolutely thrilled because the house was covered in pink flowers. And immediately I was enthralled by the whole place. And that's how it started in Tanzania. And I lived there I've lived in Tanzania since that time, really, until I was 60. But then, not in a tent, obviously. Then it was with my mum and dad. My dad was a civil engineer. My mother was just a mother. But she was not traditional mother in the sense that she wasn't a mummy. She would always doing her own thing. And if what we were doing, or if she was doing something that interested her, or whatever it was, then we would get involved, or she would get involved. But we had obviously a very, very happy family. We lived by the beach. We had a magical life. Really, it was a fantastic childhood. My dad loved safaris, and so in his obviously every time in holidays from school, we would go on a safari somewhere, and it was always my highlight. I absolutely loved it. And basically, I remember that at one time when I was now a bit more grown up, I was at school, and there were 2 things that happened actually. I was must have been about 7 or 8. And I went outside, and in those days there's so many stars. I went outside, and it's funny because I'm normally a bit scared of the night, but I went out and I just looked up at the stars, and I just had this complete feeling of love and such a warmth. It's like a warm blanket was over me, saying, and I just knew that I'd always be looked after. There was nothing to worry about. Life was amazing. I couldn't compute it like that as a kid, but I just knew that everything would be. Life was there to look after me.
Don't be afraid of the dark.
Exactly. Don't be afraid of it, but just to embrace. I don't know. I couldn't explain it, but I did feel this amazing feeling, and I've never forgot it. So throughout my life, as I grew up and started doing all these adventures, I always had that knowledge that everything would be all right. because that's how it is. I just knew it.
So where was your dad from?
My dad was from Northern Ireland. He was born in Dromore, County Down.
Okay. And your mum?
My mum was actually born in Egypt, but her mother was from Dublin.
Yeah.
Yeah, born in Dublin.
Did your dad love the travelling and the adventure?
Oh yes, because his father was born in Australia, and when he would talk about as a boy. He would say obviously his dad was grown up, but he was telling stories about when he was a boy in Australia, and they're going on the camels to get for gold. They went looking for gold, which is what he did, and how the Maoris would throw spears at them, and they would dodge them, and they'd go into the war. Yeah, it was a game, and he used to get so angry. These people get angry anyway. So I think my dad was always, I think as kids, they were very enthralled by this whole thing. And then also the other good thing was that he was his father was very unethical in that he was the headmaster of a school. Hello, little Robin. Hello, Robin.
We've enjoyed my little Robin.
Yes. Anyway, so I can't remember the orange parades or whatever they had in those days. My grandfather would fly the flag of Australia, so he didn't have to, say who he was from or where he was from, and so that worked really well. And also, he said even though he was a Protestant Catholic, the school that he was headmaster of was Catholic. He'd send all his children went to Protestant schools. Yeah.
And where you were living there was it in a village or?
That was in Tanzania. It was in Dar es Salaam.
Yeah.
That's the main town. It's not actually the where the government is, but it's the main town, Dar es Salaam. It's on the beach. We lived on the beach. We had a fantastic beach, and it was amazing.
What was school like for you?
School I went to. First of all, I went to the first. Everything there was new. I mean, there's no thing. So there was a school that we went to, and I think we were first pupils in this school. And no, really, it was that sort of place, and it's lovely. It was I couldn't even tell you, but that was a day school, and the bus would come and pick us up, and off we'd go, and then we'd come back again. And then we went to a boarding school when I was I think 6. Went to a boarding school up in the mountains. And I absolutely loved it. My sister didn't, but I loved it. It was just, I don't know, you could go, there were no rules, you could do what you wanted. And it was just really a lovely area. And it was a very small school. And so that was the only school I've ever enjoyed. But it was great. I loved it. But unfortunately it closed down because there weren't enough pupils after a while. So when I think I was there until I was 9, until I was 10. Then I went to school in Nairobi because that was the only place we could go.
Was this normal life or did it feel like an adventure?
Normal life. Well, what do you mean by normal life? I mean, first time when you've been living at home all that time and now suddenly you go to boarding school, I think the thing that hits you is that the food is different. you don't like the food.
Yeah.
But very quickly you realise it's actually pretty yummy if you just look at it differently. There's nothing else. And so it was actually, and there was a boys and girls school. It was co-educational, and even though the boys lived in a different part of we had boy house and a girls house, but we all ate in the same place. And so it was a very happy place. I mean, it was such a small place, and I mean, like if somebody had a birthday, everybody went. There was a teacher that had a lovely house, and we'd go there to the house, and she'd make whatever. So it was that kind of place. It was really nice.
Yeah. When you were with your parents, a question I always ask people: what were the conversations around the dinner table?
Oh, I don't know. Usually, I don't know. It depends. Like I remember there wasn't any rain for a long time, and so none of us had had a bath for a while. Even though we had the sea, it wasn't quite the same. And then one day when we were having chicken for lunch, I remember. And suddenly it started raining, and we all jumped up and ran outside. We went under there was a place where it was pouring down, so we went in there, took the soap and went out there and had a wash.
Yeah, a bit different to Skull and West Cork.
Yes. I just remember that. And upstairs, I don't know what the conversations were. I couldn't tell you, because I don't know. My dad he loved kids. and I suppose he must have talked to us about stuff, and my mother as well. But I don't remember. I think they were often talking to each other. We were just sitting, kids in those days, you have to be quiet. You don't really talk.
Were they big socialisers?
Oh gosh, yes. Parties, woof. In those days, they had my mum. Nothing she liked better than getting dressed up for a party, and so they'd have this. In those days, that's what people did because it was a staff parties that they'd do, and they'd have the caterers in, and they'd have all sorts of things happening. Yeah, you have to have a cooler, have to have ice in a big sort of tub, and then they'd put all the drinks in there and that sort of thing, and lots of eateries and stuff.
For the young kids, was it exciting for you seeing all these glamorous people coming and going?
Oh yeah, we had my sister and I would lie on because we weren't allowed to into these parties latterly, and then but upstairs there was a veranda, and she and I would lie on our tummies, get all this food that came up, all the special food. My mum would bring it up, but we would lie on our tummies and look over the railings to see what everybody was doing, and you could tell. Everyone get funny. Everyone start laughing more and more. The more booze they drank, get louder and louder. But yeah, it was fun.
Your passion for painting, where did that come from?
I don't know. But from a kid, I think there's a picture here which is Susan, aged 4. I did a painting which my dad's framed, and I think it was just that I was always encouraged. Every time I did a painting, I did a painting actually. I did a painting of an African violet, and everyone thought it was just amazing. And it's just, I don't know, I just really enjoyed it. I've always enjoyed painting. It's just sort of something I've always done.
Were you encouraged that someone said, that's good?
I think so. I definitely think so. I mean, because actually I didn't really like school. I didn't like learning stuff. I found it very boring. But I did love painting. I did love doing that. That was something that I always loved. I always enjoyed that.
Did someone teach you?
No.
So there you go. There's a canvas and there's the paint.
Well, that's how it was in those days. I mean, from school they would do. I mean, I was at school obviously, and you do painting at school. But that's when I was young.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you just do what the teacher says, and you do it the way you want to do it. They give you some poster paints and whatever, and that's it.
You were telling me that your father had a very strong principle that he always advised you to follow your lives by. What was that? He
said, never allow anybody to change your mind about what you want to do.
Yeah.
And so that's so. I took that to heart because he kept repeating it as just to make sure that nobody ever changes your mind, because he would tell us that when he was at university in Northern Ireland, I think it was Queen's University. My dad wanted to be a shipbuilder, and the tutor convinced him that because the ships were going out of style in those days, that it would be futile to be a shipbuilder, but also because he was Irish, Protestant, a Catholic. There was it definitely wouldn't make any. He wouldn't be able to live properly in Ireland with a job. He'd always be short changed for the jobs for the other fellows. So he was encouraged to live away, which for him, for my dad, was kind of like, well, he didn't need to be encouraged to do that. He was going to do that anyway. So that was, So that was a question.
Yeah, so, what I was quite interested in is when that principle...
Oh, yeah, that's right.
When it bit him on the backside a little bit, he made sure he ingrained this in his children.
Yeah, and then that's exactly what happened. Then when I was supposed to go to the school in university in Italy.
In Florence.
In Florence, yeah. There was a well-known school, I forget the name of it now, but I went there, the year before, and showed them my portfolio, and they said, yes, definitely, you can come, no problem. So it was sort of arranged, and so I went at the due date to enroll, which was the following year, and the fellow said to me, oh, yes, great, nice to see you, but can you just quickly do this test? It's very, very, very easy. So I looked at it, it's all in Italian, and I said, I can't speak Italian, so I can't, I don't understand what these questions are. So he said, oh, okay, well, that means if you can't do these tests, then you can't join the class or the school, because you have to do that. So I said, oh, well, if I go away in a few months and come back, can I? He said, no. You have to come. You either enroll now or you don't until next year. And so for me, at that age, a whole year is like a lifetime, you think.
You were in a hurry.
Well, I mean, a whole year, at that age, you just think, this, gosh, that's forever. I'm not going to do that. So I realised I wasn't able to go to the school. So I went straight, actually, to the shop, and I bought, because I had some money that I'd been given for accommodation. And so I spent half of it on buying art materials, and then the other half I used for finding somewhere to live. And obviously Florence was hugely expensive, so I decided I had to move out of town and go somewhere else. So I just sort of followed your nose. I ended up in a place called Pietrasanta. I lived there for, 4 years.
How old were you when you went there?
So I must have been about 19, 18. Well, I left home when I was 17, so...
Did you know anyone there? Was this...
No, I didn't know anyone.
You were on your own?
On my own, yeah. No, didn't know a soul, nor did I speak Italian. So, by default, you learn Italian. They're very good at helping you.
So tell me about this situation with your dad.
Oh, yeah,
and his principles.
So then he came beetling out from England to say, no, if you can't do this, if you can't go to the college, you must come to England to go to the college. And I said, no, I'm not going to school in England. That place doesn't speak to me. I've been looking at all the colleges when I was at school. We went to all the art colleges. And I definitely know I definitely can't go to art college in England, because in those it was punk rock and all that kind of stuff, feel free and paint the walls with whatever. And I wanted classical art. So he said, oh, okay, well, he said, no, you must go. And I said, no, I'm not going to go. So he said, well, if you're not going to go, I'm going to stop your money. So I said, okay, stop my money. It's fine.
Knock yourself out there.
Yes. Yeah, I was actually really hurt because I didn't remind him. I didn't say anything, but I thought, Jesus, after all this time, now you're reneging on what you've told us. Yeah. So that was it. And so off I went. That's why I got the art materials and stuff. And so,
So did you ever go to art college?
No.
No. It's just like,
never went.
I'm an artist and I'm doing it, so...
I'm going to learn just by myself. I mean, because that's how you learn. Yeah. You don't... I've always been of the opinion that I actually didn't want to learn from somebody, because then you end up with their style.
Yeah.
And I wanted to... Not because I wasn't... I think I've just been very much on the lonesome. I really like doing things the way I do them, or how... I like learning how to do things myself, because then I know how... I do them, you know what I mean? You learn better when you do it yourself than if somebody's telling you what to do. I think it would bug me. I mean, at school you had somebody telling you, but it was you were a bit younger, and it wasn't intrusive. Yeah,
but yet you were interested in that particular art college at the same time in Italy.
Italy, I was. It would have suited me. I would have liked it. I would have enjoyed it. In fact, now I actually know a lady that's still there. She's not at the college, but she was there, and I have her. She's a lovely. I mean, she's done some lovely things. I can see, it would have been fun, but I'm also glad that I didn't, because I found my own way.
How did you feed yourself?
That's a good question. I didn't feed myself. Yeah, I used to actually lived on pancakes and tea. Pancakes, because you could buy. They're very cheap. You could just buy a bit of whatever it is, for pancakes, and I just lived on tea, and then I also used to know where I did a quick squiz of all the gardens around the place, because you could always get tomatoes and stuff. And then I knew where all the good fig trees were, and you just, as the seasons go by, you just know where you can get certain things to eat. And so literally I lived hand to mouth. And so basically my life revolved around where my next meal's coming from. And obviously I always made sure I had somewhere to live. That was my priority. Yeah, so that was it. Yeah.
Were you selling your paintings?
Yeah, what would happen was I would always paint. You'd see these lovely little farmhouses and stuff, and I'd do a painting of them, and whoever was, oftentimes the lady of the house would come out and say, "Oh, come in Italian, saying, "Come and have something to eat. Come and have some whatever." Say, yeah, thanks, I will. And so have
dinner, pancakes.
Yes, no. They'll give you some cheese or something, and I don't know, something to drink. So it worked out fine. And then what happened then was there was always a lot of people that come in the summertime, Americans, and I would kind of like sell my wares when they and they were very interested. They would buy my paintings, I mean, for nothing. I mean, I can't remember what I sold them for, but nothing like I would, latterly now. But it was just literally enough to keep me going. A few bob.
Yeah, you figured it out.
Yes, yeah. It was. Yeah, you do. You figure. That's right. You make a plan. That's what I'm saying to you. There's nothing. You can always. It's like, and I think actually what happened when I said, okay, keep your money, whatever. I did. I can't lie. My head went berserk. I thought, oh, now what? How am I going to survive? How am I going to do? And my head was going mad. And I was walking along in Pietrasanta. I looked up at the sky. It was beautiful blue sky, and there's lovely sort of oak. I mean, the sort of orangey buildings. And I suddenly clicked. Something in me clicked, and I said, "Well, what are you worried about? You're in where you want to be. You've got paints. You can do what you want." And I thought, yeah, what is there to worry about? Yeah. Let's go for it. And so I did, and that's what happened. And I tell you, from that moment on, my whole life, I've never worried about money, because I know it always happens. You can always you'll always have money when you need it, always. And it's the way it works.
And were Mum and Dad checking in on you from time to time?
After a bit, like I said, once my dad sent me some money and I sent it back again because I wasn't going to have it.
Sorry, I'm not going to win with this one.
But then my mum came out once to see me, and which was nice. But she I can't remember why she came, but there was some reason why she came, and because at some point, when I decided, I think for a whole year I was living hand to mouth, and I realised I should get a job, and so then I started working for a hotel, the very nice hotel that I ended up actually went to the other day when I was there, and it's Ugo and Mila ran it. So I did a deal with them. They wouldn't pay me any money, but they would give me food and lodging, which is what I wanted. And I said, okay, but I work from early until midday. And then after that, I want to go off and do my paintings. So that was the deal we made. Yeah. So I started off very early. I worked from whatever it was, 6 a.m. until, I don't know, because everybody was mezzogiorno, they all go for lunch. And so after that, I would go do my own thing.
Okay, so you were fed and watered and you had a roof over your head.
Yes. Yeah, I had a very nice room, and yeah, it was grand. It was perfect. So exactly what I needed. And then, of course, I would do any job. So there was an old fellow there called Mr. Pardini, and I drew him quite a few times, actually. Did portraits of him, and he said to me, "You know what?" In Italian, he's saying, "You're doing your national service right now." Yeah. And so he was right. I was because I'd do any job. I'd take people breakfast in bed, wash toilets, whatever it is. I even went to pick up people from the airport. So endless jobs. And then after a bit, it was very successful actually, because when all these Americans used to come and stay, I did quite a lot of selling my paintings then. That was very good. And then once I'd made enough money to get a ticket back to Tanzania, I did. Actually, in those days it was Kenya. I wasn't in Tanzania because Tanzania was still closed up because it was wasn't open for girls. It was communist. We weren't able. I think communist is the wrong word, but it was something like that. There was no openings anyway, so it was closed. It was a closed country, basically, for everybody. Unless you were working for the church.
Yeah.
Which I wasn't. Although I have a friend, latterly, who the only way he could get a job was by getting a permit for working for the church, but he ended up doing something completely different. But he still had the permit.
Well, if there's a way.
Yeah.
So what brought the Italian adventure to it? What made you decide I'm done with it?
Well, because you get to a point when you're not learning enough. I mean, I wanted to get back to where I was from, really, because I'd already been away for quite a few years. 4 years, I think I was away in Italy. And I was like, I felt time to go back to, I was living in Kenya then. I had a boyfriend in those days who I'd left to do this. Yeah, so I went back and I took all my paintings that I'd had done in Italy to Kenya, and I had an exhibition there. There's a centre there, the community centre for English people. I can't remember what it was, belonged to the government. And so they have a room that you can use for exhibition space. And so I had an exhibition of all my Italian paintings. It was a complete sellout, so I was absolutely thrilled. So I had enough money then, suddenly. I bought a Jeep. I also had to get a bit more money to buy a Jeep, and then that was very how my career started.
Yeah. Did your dad come to that exhibition?
Yeah, he did. He came to, I can't remember which one, but he did come. He did come to, not that exhibition, no, not that one. No, but later on, when I had a big exhibition, proper exhibition, in a proper gallery, he came. Yeah.
What did he make of the progress of his stubborn daughter?
He was very, very, very pleased. He was very proud. I mean, he was very pleased all along. In fact, when I we laughed about things afterwards, when I told him the stories about how I was living, he said, "Boy, thank goodness I didn't know about that." He said, "I would never have slept a wink if I'd known you were going through all that." So.
And those 4 years, were you back and forth a little bit, or
No.
were you gone?
No. I didn't have any money to go back and forth anywhere.
And
I had a bicycle. In Italy. I had a bicycle. In fact, in Kenya too, I got a bicycle before I bought a Jeep. I had a bicycle everywhere.
Were you happy in Italy?
Very happy. Yeah, I really. I'm happy everywhere I go. Yeah. I really am.
I absolutely believe you are.
No, life is about living. And I think for me, at a very early age, I realised I would say things to my friends, and they would look at me and say, "Oh, for goodness sake, something so boring. Why don't you just go and have another drink or do something, whatever it is?" Because I would have these deep questions that nobody was interested in. It's like, why are we here? What is this all about? What? Because I was very aware of the fact that I'd had some really lovely times with my parents. But at the same time, I seen my mother actually suffered, but she didn't know she was suffering. But she belonged to my dad, and she was very much. But she liked that. She liked that security, and I just thought I never ever want to belong to anyone. I belong to me.
Yeah.
But she was that way. And she used to love to get dressed up before he came back from work, and everything would be like that. But for me, I just like.
That's how life was, though, for many women.
It was. That's what she wanted, because my dad, she said, oftentimes, it was one thing that my dad said to my mother before they got married, that from now, he said that she would never, ever have to worry about money ever again.
Yeah.
That's what he told her. And so she was really, she was very, that was, for her, it was important to have that security. But then also, funnily enough, my dad said to me, when he was sick, finally, he was in the Bantry Hospital, and I was in the States, and he was sick, and my mum said, "Oh, no, don't worry, he's fine." And I said, No. I've never had my dad ever in the hospital. I'm going to come over. So I stopped whatever I was doing in the States, which was an exhibition, I think, and I flew over. My sister came with, and we went to see my dad, and blah, blah, blah. We talked and everything, and then my dad said to my sister and my mum, "I want to talk to Susie by herself." So anyway, they were made to leave the room, and we had a really nice chat, And one thing he said to me was that never ever worry about your mother and money. She always keeps to budget, always. So, and I always remembered that. And so, you know, when my mum was getting older, her money was definitely running out. And we knew that she had, a couple of months of money before it was gone.
Yeah.
She knew that as well. That's why she was anxious too. She was in, 90s. And my sister was really fretting about it. And I said, and Rob was obviously around too, and Rob and me were sort of saying, well, it's fine. And I don't think she knew what I knew. I mean, I believed it, because my sister always thought my mother was rather flippant with money. But, when my dad said she keeps to budget, and then, literally she died. I don't think she had 1 month left, not even, before the money would be gone. I mean, she definitely she was obviously very conscious of the fact that, because she didn't want any of us to do anything.
Yeah. What brought them to this part of the world? Because he was from the north, but they ended up coming to school, was it?
Well, it became, because my other granny, my mother's mother, was from Dublin.
Yeah.
And then she retired to Skull. And then my dad, we used to go to the north. We used to go and see both grannies, north and the south. So, yeah, my mum and dad were thinking now, they really wanted to, where did they want to retire to? I think it's a question a lot of people have. But their priority was they wanted to retire somewhere where there was, where people would want to come and see them. It had to be somewhere that people wanted to come. So they
it could be very lonely with no visitors.
Well, they thought about going to Greece because they really like Greece. Yeah. And then they thought about it, and then they thought, well, it might be lonely for them. So then they thought, when they were long, because of that business with my granny and all the rest of it, they thought, well, why not? They've got this lovely house here, and my dad had done it up so nicely, and so they thought, we'll retire here. Well, in fact, I think they decided that before they made the house, that they would retire here, and absolutely happened. Everybody definitely wants to come here to visit.
Good plan.
It was a good plan, yeah.
So you bought a Jeep?
I did.
And
I borrowed the money actually to buy the Jeep.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then...
In which direction did you point it?
Then I just started off on my expeditions, and I was a complete greenhorn. I've not ever done it before. I mean, I could drive, obviously, I knew how to drive very well, but going off on these expeditions was new. Everything was a learn. Every time I went, so I'd start off and do, like, for a weekend to start off with from Nairobi, and so I'd go to a park that was fairly close by and do the weekend, and I'd think, wow, this is so great. And I actually built a little house, but what do you call this? Uniport things in somebody's farm, in somebody's garden. And I lived there. It was my home.
So you did a bit of weekend exploring.
Yeah, well, it always starts slowly because you're not very. I didn't know what I was doing. I knew didn't know what I was doing, and so I eventually I got a little cottage with these holiday cottages that they have in Savo. It was a dilapidated, but it was very usable. And so you could rent it for very, very little money. So I started living there. And when that happened, that's when I started to relearn, because I was always bite off a little bit more than I could chew. Every single time I went something a bit more difficult than the last time. Just because, you could go a bit further afield for a bit longer, and, I don't know, you just sort of organically, it happens. Yeah. And I just went. And then finally go up to Lake Rudolph, which was the considered to be the most, difficult. It was the most faraway place you could go in Kenya. And to be honest, I don't think many... I would do expeditions that I know many men wouldn't have done by themselves. And I really stress to everyone that I wasn't doing all this to be big stuff. It didn't even occur to me. The only person I was worried about was myself. I was always challenging myself, because that's always been my job, is to challenge myself.
And what were you doing?
What was I drawing?
Was
painting.
The purpose of it to find a better location to paint? Was that what was driving you, or?
Every time was yes, I was painting for sure. Yeah. That's why I was going to paint, and then some places were really great, and you know, yes, you keep coming back to the same place. I mean, like we were talking about before, I was just driven to just see places and to experience life, I think, and definitely painting was the business. I mean, I've been reading my diaries, and it's quite repetitive, but what I'm saying there is basically about why can't I, you know, I must do this better next time, and blah blah.
So, when did you pitch tent and going to stay here now?
Well, I tell you what happened was when I was a child, we did a trip to Ruaha National Park.
Yeah.
And I was I think I was 6. I was 6 years old, and we went. Ruaha in those days was miles away from Dar es Salaam. I mean, it was a real epic trip to get there. And my dad had a saloon car. He didn't have anything fancy, and you know, it was so exciting, this whole trip to go to this. And we went to this place called Ruaha, and so anyway, and you had to get on they had a little, what do you call it? It was not a boat, but where they pull you across.
Oh yeah, okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You get onto, it's like a ferry, but they pull you across. And you get to the other side, and then off we go. And so anyway, so we stayed in this place in Ruaha, and I remember that the elephants coming to eat the seeds around us, and my mum was stuck doing the kitchen on the outside. It was all outside, you know, and my mother was making us sort of lunch or something, and the elephants were just hanging around. She's like, "Oh, I'm burning, the food's burning, what do I do?" Anyway. And then we did a lot of really, really lovely game drives. And I remember I always used to sit on the windowsill of the car as we went along and hold on. And so I could look around. So I was basically outside. And I just remember being so happy. I thought my heart would burst. I just loved it so much. It was so beautiful. It just really spoke to me. And I said to myself, when I grow up, I'm going to live in Ruaha. And so basically what happened was it didn't, because of the way life goes, it didn't happen until I was in my 20s, until I was 22. What was I? Anyway, Tanzania had opened up, and one thing after another. I mean, the way life goes is that, you know, we were in Kenya at the time. No, we were in northern Tanzania. Rob was with me, and we were on a game drive, and we saw there was a car that was in trouble, and so we went to save it. We're in a game park, and it wasn't, not Ruaha, but a different game park, and in northern Tanzania. And so these people are in trouble, and so we pulled them back to headquarters. And when we got there, the fellow said, "Thank you very much," and he pulled out his card, Tanzanian guy. And it happened to be he was the chief park warden he was the chief of the whole national parks. He was the boss, what do you call them? And so he said, "If you ever need anything, just come and see me." So I was like, "Oh, yes."
We have an in here.
Yeah. So anyway, we went to see him one day. Not immediately, but we did go and see him because we needed to get a work permit to be in the country. And so we went to see him, and we had a conversation, and he was chatting away, very nice chap, and Madam Ari, and he said, "How come you're here? How come you're in Tanzania?" And so I said, "Well, I actually grew up here because, you know, my dad built the university in Dar es Salaam." So he said, "Oh, wow, I went to that university." And so
this is all lining up very conveniently.
Yeah, and so we became real buddies, and he was a very nice man anyway, and he was thrilled, you know, and I was thrilled. I thought, "Oh yes, yeah, it was blah blah." Anyway, so we said, "Was any chance you could write us a letter to say that because in those days you had to have a letter written by somebody who was a somebody before you could get a permit." And so he said, yeah, of course I will. And so he wrote us the letter, and we got the permit. And then I said, "Is there any chance that we can go and live in Ruaha, go to Ruaha?" So I said, yeah, I can organise that, don't worry. So, okay, so we did. That's how we went. And we got this permit, and we got the letter, and we got everything that we had needed, and off we went.
And were other people living
No one,
there?
no one.
So you have your permit.
Our permit, yeah. We were told. He said to us, "The warden there will tell you where to go." And there was a camp there, but it was the fox camp, and it had been there for a long time. But that was the only one at the time. In fact, there were 2 fox camps, but they're just brothers. Anyway, so we were told to go to Jongamero, which was completely in an area where there was nobody. There was a ranger post had just been made there, but until there had never been anybody there. So that's where we went. He said, find somewhere, you can go anywhere in Jongamero area, but as long as you can't be seen from the road.
Okay, so off you go in the Jeep, find a spot. And
Well, we both had Jeeps.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. By then I'd got a Land Rover, because when my aunt passed away in Jamaica, I inherited a bunch of money, and so I used that to buy a proper Jeep.
Okay. So
Land Rover.
Find your spot and pitch up.
Yeah.
And that was it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Do you remember that day when you found your perfect spot?
It wasn't the perfect spot then, no, it wasn't. But what I was very aware of was that I'd been in so many amazing places before that time. I was thinking, well, I wonder what I feel about Raha this time. I mean, I've been so many lovely places. When I was driving down the road, I was looking at it. It was all very familiar somehow. I could remember it, and then I thought, wow, it's pretty nice. Anyway, so I think it was. We found, because I have this thing about having separate camps.
Yeah.
I wouldn't, because I'd lived with my boyfriend for years, and I knew after we were together for 5 or 6 years. I knew after that I never wanted to share a room with somebody again. I wanted to have my own space, because I said I felt when you do that, everything becomes so samey, and you end up not seeing the person for what they are, and you end up sort of eating a piece of toast, having your coffee, going off to work, and you may as well be wherever with whoever, and it just loses its whole magic. And also, because I'm a giver, you end up doing a lot of giving and not a lot of doing what you need to do. And I just decided I've made a deal with myself, I'll never do that again. And so because of that, poor Rob, to start with, it was like, when we have a camp, we go, you have to have our own camps. Okay, fine. But, for a while he kept coming, I think we, no. Sorry. I mean, we'd meet every morning for breakfast and for dinner and whatever we did. I can't remember. But I just had to sleep by myself, have my own bed.
Okay.
That's my thing.
So
and
Rob trotted off now.
Yeah, well, it happened.
Today is over.
Well, I didn't have to say anything. I mean, it just because after it doesn't take very long. Actually, he realised it was a very nice idea, because he could do what he wanted in his camp, and I could do what I wanted in mine. And then we were always enjoying each other's company. Always. I mean, I can't stress it enough. In fact, I had a lot of friends now that have been doing the same thing, and they agree that it's really important to have your own space.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a concept most of us do not understand.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's not because you don't.
It's not normal living, really, is it?
Well, I think it is becoming now.
Yeah.
It's amazing, because I think people don't realise how fun it is to have your own space. It really is. It makes all the difference, because, like I said, Rob and I always admired each other. Always. It was just wonderful for both of us, because we both admired each other, and that never stopped.
How did you meet Rob?
That was also funny, because what happened for that was that we were living in a place called Ruaka, but Rob had not Rob, but my boyfriend, who I was living with at the time, Chris, his brother got a job working with Rob when he got that big horse project, because Tim was also not a sculptor, and so he got a job with Rob, and so we were visiting Tim and Anne, their house, and Tim was talking about his new job with this guy, and I was in the kitchen with Anne doing something, and this guy, and he said, I'm working with this guy, and he's called Rob Glenn. I tell you, my body went cold. It started. I had this huge feeling, and I thought, "Wow, what? Who is this dude? You know, what's happening here?" Anyway, so then, a few days later, I think it was, or no, sometimes later, we were again at his house, at Tim's house, and Rob walked in. He said, "I think they said Rob was." I thought, oh, I think Tim said Rob's coming, and so okay, now I get to see this dude. And so anyway, so he walked in, and I thought, what? This guy? He's old, you know. And I thought after a bit, oh God, he tells such terrible jokes. Really?
The old man with the terrible jokes.
Yes. And so I thought, boy, there's something wrong with my head. Obviously, I don't know what that was about. Anyway, I don't know. After that. I don't know, we sort of, Tim and Chris and me like to swim in the school pools, and so that's what we did, and Rob was swimming as well, and so I guess that's how we got to know each other, like that. And then he also had a gym, and I was very much into fitness at the time, into everything fitness, and so he convinced that we should be at the gym. Well, I just joined them because everybody else was there. And so I guess we just slowly, and then after a bit, I realised that, you see, this guy has got an awful lot to teach me. He knows an awful lot. And he was absolutely, because what I really wanted to do was learn how to draw birds, and he was he knew everything about birds. It was totally what I needed to be with. And so actually he showed me how to. This was actually before I got a Jeep. He took me to a place off the Ngong Hills and left me there. But he showed me how to net birds and how to hold them and then can draw them and then how to let them go. And so that's how I started with my birds. And then obviously I started doing that. And every time I went to do a trip, I would... come back to Rob's place and show him my paintings, and he would crit them, the birds, and he'd do little drawings about how the anatomy of birds and everything. So he taught me everything, and so that's how I got to know. Okay. Yeah.
And in the process, he found a new bird.
Oh, I tell you, yeah, it's so funny that because he was married, and I actually didn't sit well with me at all, yeah. And I really didn't enjoy that at all. So that's when I did a trip around. I did a 6 months trip down all over Africa, South Africa, Kenya. But anyway, so I did a whole trip. It took me 6 months. I went to Namibia, it was one of the places, and I went to Zambia, and I went to the other place, not Zambia, Victoria Falls. Anyway, lots and lots of places I went, and then the Okavango. But funnily enough, somehow Rob always managed to find me.
So did you do that deliberately to break that sequence or whatever?
Yes, definitely. Yeah. I wanted to break the. I didn't want to be involved in somebody who was married. Yeah. I didn't feel good about that, and I certainly never encouraged him. I always encouraged him not to keep away, but not. I didn't say it like that, but I never challenged him. To say, if you want to be with me, you have Rob do blah blah. No, it's quite the reverse. Because by then our relationship had changed. Yeah. For various reasons, it changed when we did this trip. Actually, he's telling you about with the Somalis. That's the first time it changed, and I realised, whoa, this is something different now, and I didn't like it anyway, but. Rob was persistent, I promise you. He just wouldn't leave me alone. Everywhere I went, I thought, what are you doing here? Oh, well, I just had to because of X, Y, Z. He always had a reason.
Just passing by.
Yeah. Well, anyway, it was wonderful. So anyway, so that's how I got... Rob and I became very good friends before we became lovers. And then we've always just been good friends, always.
Yeah. But in separate camps, having said that.
Yes, having said that. Definitely still in the separate camps, always. And latterly, he really enjoyed that too.
On part 2 of the podcast, I hope you can join me to hear Sue's story of living in this beautiful East African wilderness for nearly 40 years, and her book, Nature Speaks, which captures this adventure perfectly. Thank you for listening to the When Happy podcast, which has been brought to you by Fusion Communications. If you'd like to get in touch, feel free to send me an email at greg@fusion.ie. So until next time, take it easy.